Hello and welcome to Straight Talk, Supply Chain Insights, the podcast for your supply chain leader who is on the go and wants to be in the know. And now, your host, Laura Ciceri.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Supply Chain Insights. My name is Laura Ciceri, and I'm the founder of Supply Chain Insights. And this is a podcast series that's designed for the supply chain leader who's on the go but wants to be in the know. This is a special series that focuses on career advice. And in this series, I'm interviewing 25 senior supply chain leaders to ask them the same questions. What would they tell their 25-year-old self? You know, when we enter the career at 25, we may not know the questions to ask, but in this series, we get to reflect. And today I'm interviewing Dave Clark from Augur. And Augur is a new startup, and Dave comes to us with lots of experience. So Dave, tell the group a little bit about yourself.
Sure. And thanks for having me, Laura. And thanks for doing these. This was fun. This would have been helpful when I was 25. So I spent probably my claim to fame is spending 23 years at Amazon. I joined Amazon in 1999 out of the University of Tennessee. I started as basically the lowest level you can start at Amazon in management as a supply chain analyst, I think was my official title. And spent 23 fantastic years building and learning and developing supply chain technology, automation, robotics, and building stuff. Left there, was chief supply chain officer for a long time, and then left there in 2021, I guess, as the CEO of the consumer business.
Fantastic. I remember when Amazon just sold me books, you know.
When I joined, we had just launched music a few months before when I joined. We were under $1 billion in revenue, and we're a small group. I joined on Friday, which was the peak stock price of the dot-com bubble, and Monday the crash started. So it was the start of a very long climb back.
Well, Dave, take me back to when you were 25. Tell me about the 25-year-old Dave and, you know, kind of set the stage.
Yeah, I will do my best to remember back to 25. But, maybe I'll go back. I'll set that, but a little bit earlier than 25. So I grew up in a family business. My parents owned a carpet store, and I learned to drive on a forklift, basically. And so I was always kind of in this working in the back office and worked all through high school and the back of service merchandise, which was like e-commerce before there was e-commerce, or like omni-channel maybe before there was omni-channel, and then in the back of a public supermarket. So I kind of grew up around operations. I was a music major in undergrad, but I paid for my college by running the operations for the music department for most of my time there. And I graduated and was teaching, and so I think I was teaching about the time I was 25 or 23 to 25, and I was like, this is fantastic, but it's going to be the same thing for the rest of my life. So I went back to grad school to logistics transportation at Tennessee. And this is where I wish I had known some of what I know now. I went to grad school and I got really lucky because there were some professors there who I think felt sorry for the fact that this music major was really interested in supply chain, trying to figure it out. And they kind of adopted me in the OR program. And so I did a bunch of work on optimization science. And that's how I got to meet Amazon when Amazon came to visit Tennessee, and how I ended up at Amazon. But it was really this intellectual curiosity of trying something new and going on a path that wasn't the standard path that ended up getting me to Amazon. It's like, it wasn't the class that I was taking. It was the thing that I had the opportunity to do outside of the class. And it was probably the first of what has been a long journey of being curious about something, meeting people, and following maybe the less obvious path that has led a lot of my career and my journey. Yeah.
So being open to the outcome is a tough thing to teach people, right? Many 25-year-olds I meet, have their career and they've laid it out on a piece of paper, and it's step A, step B. And most of those steps are, I want to get promoted. I, have, ambitions about money. What would you tell your 25-year-old self if we went back around, being open to that outcome and, because you really didn't know what Amazon was going to be?
Yeah. I didn't. What I knew was for much of my life, I have made, with a few minor exceptions, I have made the choice on what to do next by the people I met, the quality of those people, the, how much were they going to push me to do? What was I going to learn new? What would be curious and interesting? And that has led me on some really fascinating, fun paths. And uh, I didn't do it purposely. It's one of the things that I recognize in looking backwards that I did it, but I was not as conscious of it at the time. So I would tell myself and others to, you know, look out for the fork in the road. Like, don't be so blinded, as you said, don't be so blinded by the boxes you're trying to check that you miss a super interesting off ramp. Because especially as much as the world's going to change in the next 5, 10, 15 years, like you really want to be paying attention to the interesting off ramps.
Yeah, and you don't know what those are going to be.
No.
Uh, so I'm
They never
curious.
announce themselves before they get there. Unfortunately, never quite that clear.
I know, and I think you just have to be open. So
Exactly.
tell me about the life at Amazon. So you're a young supply chain analyst and you go to this company and back then you were just introducing music and Amazon changed dramatically in 23 years. Tell us about that career.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, it was funny. I started at Amazon. I graduated on Friday, started on Monday because Amazon said, "We need you here." And I got there on Monday and nobody knew I was coming. So it was like very startup. And my boss was traveling for like 3 weeks. So I actually started at Amazon going around to different groups and asking who needed help to see what I could do. And so HR ended up needing help. And by the way, that's a thing for people. HR will always take help if you
Yeah.
yeah. But my first operations stint was really, I did the labor plans for all the big expansion of fulfillment centers that Amazon was going to do. We went around and hired a bunch of employees. And then my boss called me one day and was like, "Hey, how do you feel about Japan?" I was like, "Japan sounds fantastic." I'd actually never been out of the country before. I didn't have a passport, believe it or not. And I ended up going to launch Japan for operations. Which is like, so I just would, it's like these things of, be good. It was like my path at Amazon was be really good at whatever you're doing and be really open to whatever opportunity to do more there is. And that led me on a path that, probably the mid point of my career, the big turning point probably in my career, if there was one, one moment was the Kiva acquisition and the work to define and design that next generation of multi-floor robotic fulfillment center. And sort of that move put me on the path to be, what was, head of worldwide operations or chief supply chain officer for Amazon. And then, from there, we built out the logistics last mile piece. By the time, when I left, we were just passing the size of UPS and basically in about a 6-year window. So, we built a lot of things. And then I spent a year and a half as a CEO of the consumer business. So it's just a super rewarding blur of, great people and building fun things in supply chain.
You said a couple of things I think are really key that the first thing you did was you offered to help people, that, the HR people needed help. And it sounds like, by volunteering and then getting good at labor planning, that kind of opened doors for you.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it's a good point for people who are like early stage career. I think people can get very like myopic, like I want to do my thing. And it can almost be political. Like I don't want to help, but really expanding your scope, like, I just always found be as big as you can be, like take on as much as you can take on, whether you own it or not, help the people that need help. You know, it pays dividends over time. Either, spoken or unspoken dividends. It's very valuable work.
And then the second thing that I hear underlying this is kind of that evolution of supply chain practice. Now, I was at AMR Research when Kiva was trying to find customers.
Mhm.
They bounced around in the market a long time, and you put them on the map, and being able to have the pick come to the operator was a key innovation in robotics and warehousing. You know, how did you take that step as an innovator?
We had this real challenge coming, which one we'd looked at Kiva for a long time and we could never quite figure out how to make it work. It was a very interesting system. Mick and that crew had built something really different and interesting, but we
Hmm.
never quite figure out how to make the scaling work. And we really needed to be multi-floor. Like this is where FBA was really growing really fast. Our storage profile was changing. We needed a lot more inventory per square foot than we needed previously. And so you needed to go vertical, you need to go very dense, and you needed to singulate. So you needed to get things into a format that could be sorted to put two things or more in a box. But we couldn't figure out how to do it. We finally had an unlock, sort of an invention in the way we were going to do sortation in the process. Actually, sort of came out of a migraine I had one night where I had to like lay in bed for an hour and a half in darkness. So I found that it sometimes helps to just like, but
Yeah.
I, we came up with that, and then it unlocked all of it. Kiva became the solution that enabled us to go vertical, enabled us to pick for sort very efficiently. It was interestingly, people think of it as a labor economics, but it was really storage economics. That's what drove
Hmm. And flexibility, right?
flexibility and the storage piece.
Yeah. So the courage to be an innovator is, I think, part of your legacy. What else would you tell people as you think about that career? Any career advice that you would add on to what we've already talked about?
Well, I mean, when I think of the things I'm proud of in my career, I'm really proud of the things we built. I'm probably more proud of the people I got to work with and the people that sort of grew alongside of that. I mean, there's some people that had unbelievable careers out of that and, grew from, very junior people to like running unbelievable global organizations and scaled themselves in ways they, didn't know they could do. And, being a small part of that journey with them is incredibly rewarding. And we did a lot of things that I think changed the scope of how labor operates in these buildings and things as well. So there's just a lot of things that I think people's lives we changed, customers' lives we changed, the paradigms and the way the industry works that I think we had strong impacts on. That was just a lot of fun. And it's I'm proud that we got to help the profession along the way.
Did you stub your toe at all? Did you have issues where, besides
No, never.
migraines?
I was perfect every day for
Yeah.
23 years. No, lots of toe stubbings along the way, and big ones and small ones. And, I think the place where I've always been on that is make the mistakes thoughtful ones and get up quick. Right. It's like the only mistakes I ever really feel bad about are the dumb ones, like, where I just like blindly walked into something because I missed it, didn't think thoughtfully about it. But really, everybody makes them all the time, and I think the biggest mistake I see young people make is just they get lost in them. Instead of just jumping up real quick, dusting yourself off, and keep moving forward, they tend to get stuck in it and don't know how to get out of it. You know.
I interviewed someone yesterday who said, that he doesn't judge people by how they fall down, but how they get up. I
Yeah.
thought that was, brilliant, get up quick, and learn from the mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually one of our operating principles at Augur is that, we are going to, we are going to fall. There are going to be mistakes that are made, but what matters is how fast you get up and how fast you fix it, and being transparent about it. That's the other thing is I think people are too afraid to share their mistakes and their learnings. And that vulnerability helps other people and it helps companies get better.
Anything else you'd share, as you look back on your career about?
You know, advice I got early in my career from Jeff Wilkie, who was a great mentor of mine over the years, was take the unexpected job, the hard job, the one that people don't really expect you to succeed at, because when you succeed at it, people learn something about you. If you're an accountant and you go do an accounting job and you're good at it, that's not really surprising. Like nobody really remembers that. But if you're accounting and you go run a fulfillment center, like that's surprising. And people remember that. And it makes you fungible. And, over time, some of the most valuable components of a person as a leader is your ability to be fungible and do multiple things, right? And to be a player on the team in lots of different ways. And I think that's where this sort of being open to wondering a bit, being open to a career that moves both upward and laterally to learn and develop and do new things so that you are fungible is a big deal. And take jobs that are risky. I mean, if you really want big success, I think professionally, you have to, I used to call them badge on the table, right? You have to make some bets where you put your employment badge on the table and say, I'm all in on this. And,
Hmm.
those are fun and reward.
Put your badge on the table. So your point about nobody will necessarily remember an accountant that does a good job, right? But take risk and make a name for yourself. Put your badge on the table. Remember hearing supply chain for the first time in about 1982. And
Mm.
as I think back to supply chain, and I'm older than you, but at 71, I've been in the career for roughly 50 years. And I think back to supply chain careers and the evolution of globalization and, what it takes to be a supply chain player. And a lot of times people will say, you need to be a team player. But I say, is it a game of soccer or football or cross country or swimming? What are the definitions of makes a good team player in supply chain?
That's a great question. And it's funny, like the program I was in at Tennessee was still the logistics and transportation program when I graduated.
Yeah, yeah.
Then migrated to supply chain yet.
It was the supply
Yeah.
chain, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's when I think of team player, at least as I've thought about it, it is the person that does not limit their area of input, participation, or contribution to the box in the org chart by which they occupy. So whether that's in a meeting, asking questions, contributing, what have you. We have a principle here we call in all the time, which just means there are no tourists. Like if you show up at a meeting, be in the meeting and participate. And that's what teamwork looks like to me. It's like if you see a peer struggling on something that you know how to do, help them. Like don't wait to be asked. Don't worry about it. Go help. And it's that flexibility of your organizational box and personal uh, sphere of influence to me is the core of that.
All in all the time.
Yeah.
Great. Anything I didn't ask you that we want to share?
No, I would. Only thing I would add is I do think if I were 25, supply chain is still a fantastic place to be. I get asked a lot of times, is this a good time to be in supply chain? And pretty much every day since I graduated, I've said this is the best day to join the profession. And I still think that's true. I think, no matter what happens with AI and automation in the world over the next, coming decades, making and moving things for consumers around the planet is going to be a massive part of the global economy for as long as the eye can see. And I think people need to do different things in the profession. They need to be more analytically oriented, more technically oriented. Some of what the roles are will be different, but this is an incredible place to be for the next 25 years.
Yeah, supply chain has been just a great career for me. And,
Great.
as an innovator, I'm just going to ask you one more question. What
Yeah.
excites you? When you look at what, kind of the evolution of technology and work processes, what excites you?
I am mixed. I would say two pieces are really exciting me. One is I think sort of the integration of data and the application of artificial intelligence is going to restructure the way employment looks and the way the jobs look in supply chain over the decade or two to come, and move us more from a siloed breadth organization or a depth organization to be more of a breadth organization. I think of it almost like an hourglass more than a pyramid, and is going to elevate, I think, more supply chain people into business thinking as opposed to just functional thinking. I think it's
Hmm.
going to be huge. And then I think compute on the edge is going to do incredible things for robotics and physical innovation as well. And so I think between those two things, supply chain has the ability to like fundamentally reshape the way that everything is done over the next couple of decades. So I think it's a very exciting time in terms of what's possible in the space.
Well, only 7% of the industry has innovative focus, and you are an innovator and still are. And it's great to talk to you today. Thank you for joining our
Yeah, appreciate
podcast.
it. Thanks for
Yeah.
doing it.
Good luck with Augur. And, folks can follow Dave's work at Augur. He's doing some great stuff and reinventing analytics. All the best, Dave.
Thanks. Appreciate it.